All right, guys. The world of throwers. I just want to have a bit of a chat around the throwing community, and we've got some awesome people on our panel. We've got Scotty Martin, we've got Matt Denny, and we've got Mikey Barber. And I will introduce those guys in a bit of a second. Just myself. My name is Grant Ward, and I'm currently employed as a performance manager at the West Australian Institute of Sport, former throws coach and coach of Kimberly Mickle, silver medalist at Moscow World Championships. I've had a background for quite a while, jumps, combined events, and now I'm pigeoned as throws and no longer a coach, but I'm certainly involved in the high performance area to try and at least assist the direction with which our high performance model works. So to my top left, I've got Scotty Martin. Scotty's an Olympian in two disciplines. He's an Olympian in the shot put. He's a former Australian record holder in the shot, and he's also an Olympian in discus. So there's another question to ask at a later date. So Scotty, I'm just going to give a bit of a brief one. Down in my bottom right-hand corner, I've got Mike Barber. Mike is about to be probably coach of the year. He's coached his wife, Kelsey Lee Barber, to a world championship gold medal, and congratulations for that. That's an outstanding result, an outstanding performance. To the bottom left, we've got Matthew Denny. Thanks, Matt. The only athlete on the panel tonight, but he gives a bit of a split between discus and hammer, so that we've trying to make sure we've got all of our bases covered in terms of the throws and how we can actually do that. So that's that. I'm going to just pass it on very quickly to Scotty, just to have a bit more of a, if you would like to just sort of say a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll just go around the board, just a couple of different things.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. So I've already covered it pretty well. Ex-shot put, discus thrower. Personal best I'll mention because I still have a larger discus personal best than somebody else on this panel, which is a bit of a head scratcher really, because he's a much better discus thrower than I am.
How good's throwing in hurricanes?
Talking about Matty. It's been a breeze that day.
Yeah, dead silent, eh?
So I threw 21-27 in the shot put, which at the time was a decent throw. These days it seems like a bit of a joke. Shot put's gone a bit mad. At 65-63 in the discus. Competed at the Olympic Games in 2008, 2012, and then switched to coaching in 2013. And coached Damien Birkenhead to the Olympics in Rio 2016. And then we're looking forward to Tokyo.
Matty D.
Hi, my name's Matthew Denny, and I'm a Olympic discus thrower and Commonwealth Games medalist in hammer. My background is mainly used to do all disciplines other than jav, because just all good, doesn't all agree with me. But yeah, I had a solid junior career when I was growing up, and then transferred quite well into the senior ranks, and sort of still on my way of progressing that. So definitely think I have the experience on discussing, what it takes to get to a level at a certain age, and what that takes mentally and physically. But I'm glad to be here to chat with all of you guys, because I think there needs to be more education about what it does take to be a thrower. And I think the future of especially athletics in Australia is field events and sharing that knowledge that we do have, because I think that we do have the knowledge that can beat internationals, but it's probably not shared as much as what the others are, and just getting that education around is really important. So this will be very good and positive in the step forward.
Thanks, Matt. Mike.
Hey guys, so my background was as a decathlete, and while we're big noting our PBs, I threw 14 in shot put and 45 in discus. So,
Beast.
Definitely up there with the guys on this panel. A bit like Grant, I've got a background, obviously, coaching a bit of everything. I actually fancied myself more of a jumps and hurdles coach initially, but then I kind of fell into coaching Kelsey and have since developed my knowledge of jab. So I coached Kelsey, Jaden Sawyer, Jess Bell, and a bunch of other junior athletes in Canberra. So for me, Grant was actually one of my biggest mentors in my career. So I'm just happy to, be here to share some knowledge and give you an insight into how I've progressed in a short period of time to where I'm at and where I think I can keep improving as a coach, and we can keep improving the throwing events in Australia.
Okay, so we've been given a series of different questions, so and we're going to try and sort of push forward with some of this stuff and see how we go with it. But I think given the current situation with COVID and the lockdowns, I think everyone's experienced different situations in terms of how they've dealt with that. I think mostly athletes who are in institute situations have been able to do the things they need to do. So I'm not going to go down that road so much, but I do have an interesting question for Matt. Post 2021 Tokyo Olympics, in 2022, there's a very, very narrow window between the World Championships and the Commonwealth Games. The question is, what would be your prioritize? What would you prioritize?
I think the main focus for us will obviously be World Championships, because our main focus is to end up taking all of the top major championships. But I think that, in past with me and with the data that we've accrued over the last 3 years with myself and Benny Thompson, my coach, we found that just the way that I hold load and the way that I hold, peak power output, and then be able to regain that and also recondition myself in a short period of time will not really affect me too much. I'll be able to carry my peak quite well. And, I should be able to be in, exactly the best form of my life at that time for both of them. So I don't see it being too much of an issue. Obviously, World Champs will be precedence because there's definitely more monetary incentive. But at the same time, my end up goal is to dominate the sport and be where I want to be. And there's obviously some big guys I got to beat, but it's just part of the role. So if I can win World Champs, I should be able to win Commonwealth Games as well. So and I mean, obviously the other question is that everyone always asks, am I going to go back to hammer? But still a undecided thing. And to think now that I was considering doing, going back to it after Tokyo this year is, definitely I'm rethinking that for sure. So it'll depend on going back and whether I do or not. So.
Okay. All right. So that's a bit of a segue into the next question, I suppose. Scott and Matt, you guys have both competed at an international level in two different events. I think, so how important is it to do more than one event? Like, obviously, Matty, you mentioned that you did all the throws except for javelin, which is fair. It's a very specialist event, and
I did it, but I did it poorly.
It off, but simple. But when is it appropriate to specialise, and when do you know when is the right time, and what event are you going to specialise in?
Scotty, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
I think that because throwing is so technical, and there's so much physics to it, to be able to understand how to apply force in multiple different, axes and just those different ways to produce force throughout all the different events. Because one deals with more rotational, one deals with more vertical, one deals with more linear. And then, obviously all of those have to be combined, but some have more elements of the other. So I think that being able to understand how to do all of that, and then when you do decide to specialize, being able to put that knowledge into a single throw can really step you up above either your age bracket or your knowledge of the sport. I definitely was when I was younger. And I remember Scotty said this to me, that he was very surprised with my knowledge of the sport and understanding of the technique when I was very young, like when I was 15 to 17. And I put that down to my understanding of all throws and how the physics worked and understanding why. And then I spent a lot of time learning how to apply that. And then most of the time those knowledge things cross over. And now we're finding that with golf, like we do a lot of long drive stuff, a lot of that's now transferring over to my disc. So I think just understanding all of that really makes your brain physically put into exactly what you need to do when you specify in the event. So just the more knowledge you have, the better.
So, Matty, when
Scotty?
did you start specialising in discus? What age were you? Discus over hammer?
So I decided mid 2018. So I was doing shot disc hammer all the way till I was 18, and then I dropped shot, and then I focused on just disc and hammer until I was 21, and then which was 2018, and now 2018 focused on disc. So
Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? So I think I was throwing shot put and discus until the age of about 23. And we have something in common, Matty, that we both had. So I was a discus and shot putter, partly because of injury. I had a really bad finger injury. So discus was kind of an outlet for me for a couple of years. And then I went on to win a Commonwealth Games in the discus, which was eventually my non-preferred event. And I think, Matty, yours similar so far. I mean, you've had tremendous success in the discus at world level, but you had that fantastic throw at the Commonwealth Games in the hammer. So it's kind of interesting that you're able to, and it was nice, I guess, that you're able to hold on and do both for that Commonwealth Games. Was that a bit of a highlight?
yeah, like I think when I look back at what I did in hammer, I definitely, I threw 74.88 and I threw a PB at Com Games and that. Myself, my coach, and many others knew that I probably should have thrown 78 plus. I think the moment just got to me and probably tried a little bit too hard. Warm-ups were like 77s and stuff, but I think I just lost the tech. So it still does frustrate me that I didn't get to that point. And I think if I carried on, I would have been at 80 easily by now. So to know that is frustrating, but I still think that what I did in hammer for the age that I was very happy with and to where I got in that time frame. So yeah.
And how much easier was discus after you dropped hammer? How much easier was it to improve in discus once you'd specialised?
Dude, we look at Benny and I consistently look back at programs that we've done and what we did just in comparison of workload and like the way that we organise weeks and stuff like that. And even now, I still think about how did I throw at the level that I did doing the two events. I still mind boggles me because of the fact that hammer's very neurally draining. Like you do like a 20 to 30 hard throw sets, you're spent. And we were just trying to break that up over the week and trying to do discs at the same time, which also isn't very easy on the body. So to do that and then come out and throw 64 high, 65 in that season, as well as 74 consistently, with the potential for those higher numbers. It was pretty crazy. And I still think that I still would be able to handle it now, but I still look back and think that was it was very difficult.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I had the same experience. So when I dropped discus and started focusing on shot put, my shot put personal best increased about a metre within, I think it was about 18 months. And it was just a lot easier to focus on that one event and try to, but as you say, I think without discus, I would have been a worse shot putter. And we're starting to see it as a coach now. So my shot putters, we do discus drills for them as well as part of specific training. So they'll do, in the most recent program, they did some full turn ball throws into a net discus style. Because there's definitely a lot of crossover and a lot of learning that you can do from those other events. So I think
with
Wardy, to answer your... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, I think with I always found that with the crossover between shot and disc, it's easy to become short in shot, but it's easy to teach length and disc. So if you're able to cross the two, you're able to get the best out of both worlds. When it comes to shot, it crosses over much better.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we've used it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's been.
No, that's good.
So I think Wardy, I like to see athletes do as many events as they can as juniors, and then as many throws as they can. I mean, javelin's a bit different when you talk about circle throws, shot put, discus, hammer. They work together to some degree because you don't have to have amazing flexibility in your shoulder, and there's a few injury concerns, I guess, whereas most shot putters don't look like javelin throwers. But if you can do a lot of sports, a lot of events, and even a lot of sports, ball sports, soccer, basketball, football, whatever it is, I think they're all helpful up to a point. And then specialising, I think Matty did it pretty well. 20, 21, 22 is a good time to specialise. Perhaps younger if it's obvious. I know it was very, very difficult for me to give up throwing discus, even though I knew I was a better shot putter. And Matty, you might have the same experience. So you've got to wait till the time's right. But certainly the more throwing events you can do as a youngster and more events, it's got to be a plus. It has to help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
absolutely. There's a few things I want to come back and touch on some other stuff as well. But I mean, I think I'm going to push on to Mike. But so Scotty and Matt, you guys have both been through the youth, junior, into senior sort of ranks, whereas Kels never started as a junior. She was doing other things. She's a country girl and she moved into Canberra or whatever. And so for her, it was a late take-up. So for Mike, my question to you, mate, was, apart from the fact that you're married to the young lady, that's got to be a bonus, and how you separate the two, we're not going to go into that. My question to you would be, what are Kelsey's innate qualities in terms of what makes her a really strong athlete? And I think as a part of that, what are you've thrown some amazing performances this last season as well, and things have progressed fairly rapidly, but what are the things that you're going to be able to tailor and work on moving forward in her future development, and where do you see that?
Two very good questions there, Woody. Yeah, look, I think when you look at a traditional pathway, Kelsey definitely didn't take one into javelin. Her family emigrated from South Africa when she was 9 years old, which, if you look at a lot of great Australian athletes of the last 20 years, a lot of them had South African heritage, so maybe there's something in that. But, she moved to Canberra as a 16-year-old, was still playing multiple sports, happened to win Pacific Schools games, and actually turned down the AA under-19 squad to play ACT netball. So, she actually took a different path by choice. And yeah, look, Kelsey, when you talk to her from a young age, she was always telling her parents that she was going to be an Olympian. She just didn't know in what. And so I think, the two qualities which have sort of kept her on the path regardless of what's happened is she's very resilient, both mentally and physically, which you have to be as a thrower. You've got to be able to, you're going to take more losses than wins in your career, especially the higher up you go into the elite level. So she's definitely developed some real grit about her over the years. And then she's relentless. And I think that's a big one. She, put herself in a training environment as a 20, 21-year-old where she was training alongside some para athletes at the AIS, but she was exposed to what a high performance training environment looked like. She was, able to observe some of the skills that those athletes demonstrated, and they're simple things. It's like being punctual, being organised, having good communication with your coach and service providers, and that really held her in good stead because she had a 12-month elbow injury at 21. She could have easily walked away from the sport, but she knuckled down, and next year came out and threw 58 and then 63 the year after, and sort of emerged on the scene. But again, that resilience came into play. She had a couple of years where I started coaching her and she didn't improve. And it took us 3 years to get her a PB, and that was 2017. But in the background, we were doing lots of really good work with our physiotherapists and building the body, building her engine to be able to handle what she's been able to do the last 2 or 3 years. And, you know, it's, I did a presentation the other day where I showed a video of Kelsey at 18 and a video of Kelsey at 28, and no one would have picked that 18-year-old was going to be a world champion. But again, that relentlessness and that resilience that she developed and was part of her definitely helped to get there in 10 years' time. In terms of the athlete, she's got amazing feel for her body, awareness of what she needs, whether it's you know, when she's talking to the physio around what's tight, what's sore, in terms of training elements, what she knows when we need to target certain things a lot more than others. And when she's throwing and training, you know, it's very much, she makes me look good. You know, she's very, our program's very athlete-led, athlete-driven. So it makes it a lot easier for me to work when I've got an athlete like that. So, you know, moving forward, we took a big leap forward last year, put 3 meters on the PB and ended up winning the world champs. But the goal now is to continue to build the body, build the engine, build the resilience so that she can start to throw, you know, 68, 69, 70 meters. And when you're in that stratosphere, you're pretty unbeatable at the world level in javelin. So that's where we're sort of aiming. And it's not about making big changes. It's sort of continuing the patient progression we've had over the last couple of years.
Thank you. That's great. Just a quick one. I'm going to pause this. All right. So thanks, Mike, for that. I think one of the things that's really important that comes out of that is that multitasking, the ability to do multiple events is really important. And I think that I'm a former phys ed teacher, and one of the things that's really important in my journey is that whole growth and development through a lot of different physical activities. And there's a lot of research out there to suggest that the more opportunities you have to do multiple things, the better your athletic career is going to be at some point. So early specialization is not something that I think we would all agree is a good thing. So keep doing lots and lots of different things in lots of different planes and lots of different movements, throw stuff all over the place, and and I reckon we'll get some results. So just coming back to, I wanted to come back to Scott and talk about, well, the rotational events in particular. Is there a transfer between the rotational shot and the rotational disc? And then I want to lead on another thing is that why has rotational shot become the #1 technique for throwers in the world as opposed to glide?
Yeah, okay. So I might ask Matty as well. I certainly noticed, it's interesting, when I was throwing as an athlete myself as a shot putter and a discus thrower, there's very little known about rotational shot puts. So discus played a huge part in my development. And basically, you know, the strategy's a little bit different now, but I'd just try to do the same thing in shot put as I did in the discus and have a slightly different delivery. But I saw a huge crossover in the back of the circles, quite similar. Matty, I know that you threw some really pretty amazing throws, and I don't think you really trained for shot put at all, but you rock up to national championships at a juniors, and I think you just about broke my record one year off maybe.
Yeah, we had a bet on that one.
Sessions, so.
Yeah, like from what I've seen and talked to a lot of people about, especially with shot, is that I think the reason, like one of the parts is, you know, one of the progression parts of rotational shot at the moment is the fact that it's so competitive that it's feeding itself. The competitiveness is feeding the innovation of the throw. And the comparison between rotational and glide, obviously everyone knows that there's more potential in rotational compared to glide because you have more movement potential as well as rotational energy and just more lift force compared to glide. But what they're finding a lot, especially talking to Dale Stevenson and Tommy Walsh and all those boys, a lot of their stuff that they're working on is about, you know, cross sling path and loading basically completely different to what is basically taught through rotational throws on keeping shoulders shut between in hips and loading up and wrapping a lot more. Where in comparison now, it's more about how much cross sling path can you create between the left arm and the right leg to create a stronger whip out of the back into the center, and then you create your wrap, and then the hips continue. So I think it's a multiple part on why that rotational is taking off, but I think it's more the fact that it's so competitive that everyone is trying to find every ounce of rotational, and the fact that it's also so new. You know, like they started rotating properly. Tierback from America, he was one of the first guys that really started to kick it off, and a couple of other guys, which was in the late 70s, and then within 10 years, you had Randy Barnes, who went the 23, and then it sort of stagnated and sort of went in between being good and sort of average, and now it's sort of just shot off because of the competitiveness. One person went 22, and 10 people, now it's 22 high consistently, and if you don't throw 22, you're not in the top 12. So
is there a type of person that is more inclined to suit glide as opposed to rotation?
Yeah, for sure. So, and just to add on to what Matt is saying, I think rotation is showing to be the more effective technique. And part of that emergence as well is that Europe have finally decided to rotate. And I think they were sticking to the glide for a lot longer, and perhaps now they're starting to rotate a bit more, and more countries are doing it and getting better at it. And there's more knowledge about it, and there's internet, all these sorts of things that weren't really around when rotation started. What we've seen, the gliders that are successful now are very, very tall, so they can use their long levers to stretch out over the stop board. So you look at guys like, David Stahl is one of the most talented athletes I've ever seen. I'm sure he'd throw 22 meters rotating or gliding, wouldn't matter. But he's 6'6", he's a tall guy, very powerful. Thomas Majewski was 6'9", 6'10". Andrei Miknovic, Yuri Bilano, some of these guys, they're all 6'6" plus. So you're looking at, if you can be really tall and have those levers, then you can be successful at glide. There have been a few shorter guys that have been successful at gliding, but they're few and far between. So realistically, it's going to be more effective as a shorter athlete to rotate. But then even guys like Ryan Krause is not a short guy, and he's having a lot of success in rotation as well. So interesting to see where it progresses from here, but there'll be fewer and fewer gliders in the top 8 and on the podiums, I would have thought.
Just in the simplicity, Mike, you're a combined event coach, as so am I as well. And so as an advocate for the glide for decathletes, I think it's a much simpler and less daunting event if you glide, because there's more consistency with it. So in terms of the rotation for a multi-event, I think the glide is more suited to decathletes. There are a few decathletes that have rotated, but given that you're after all points, there's a fair chance that I wouldn't be advocating for a rotation in a decathlete or heptathlete for that matter. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's already risky enough throwing a shot put as a decathlete or a heptathlete, so you just got to keep it as simple as possible. How about female shot putters? Do you think the trend's going to go to rotation for them as well?
Yeah, I think it will. It's already starting. It's a difficult one, isn't it? So, and again, you look at some of the better throwers. Look at Valerie. She's very tall, very long. She's got long levers. So she was successful with the glide. I think you'll see more and more rotation, but I guess the verdict's still out. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, see, I always find it interesting that women's shot hasn't transferred to rotational as much. I always found that, like Danny's always been so high and above everyone technically for rotational, also like for disc. So I think that, if they're able to take what Danny's tech is and similarities and stuff like that, that's where, they'll step back over that 21 meter mark consistently. And I always think that, I've always loved watching glide throws, but I think that the bigger athletes, the very tall, long, reachable athletes can get away with rotation. Get away with glide. But then are just absolutely unbeatable when it comes to rotational. But it's not the other way around when you're a shorter athlete. So I think that, yeah, definitely rotational is the dominant. But yeah, I'm always surprised that women's hasn't transferred faster, considering what men's shot has done.
Guys, we're going to leave it there. We're running out of time. I'd like to thank you all. It's been a fantastic chat. And hopefully the
Thanks,
community has enjoyed it. So thanks again for your time and your energy and effort.